Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I am your host, Al Richards, and we've got another really good show today. I am going to be sitting down with Nichole Dawsey, and Nichole is Executive Director of Prevention ED, formerly known as National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse. First worked at NCADA as a prevention educator while she was earning her Master's of Public Health from St. Louis University. She returned to the NCADA after graduate school as a full-time prevention educator. After 5 years, Nichole was promoted to Director of Prevention Education. Over the 5 years she was in the role, Nichole oversaw the significant expanse of the prevention education program, increasing students served by 15% and department staff capacity by 25%. Under Nichole's leadership as Executive Director, Prevent ED has become the region's foremost provider of evidence-informed school-based substance use prevention programming. Prior to her work at NCADA, Nichole worked in the field of education. Nichole has a Bachelor of Arts degree from the Catholic University of America. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to one of my newest lovely friends, Nichole. Thank you, my dear, for being here with us today.
Thank you. It always feels so weird when people are reading your bio. It kind of feels like an obituary.
I know.
But the only correction I will make is that our name is Prevent Ed, not Prevent ED.
Oh,
that's probably a different kind of organization.
Okay, it is. So thank you. So yeah, Prevent
Ed.
Okay, my bad.
No, it happens from time to time. Okay. So Prevent Ed, like prevention and education. Yes.
Yeah, that does make sense, because even when I was reading, I thought, well, that sounds like something else. But I'm like, well, that's just kind of how my ability of seeing words is kind of like, it's so different.
That's okay. It's all right. It's all right.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, when you and I met at the DEA family support thing, and you know, I just connected with you so quickly. I felt like we've known each other for such a long time, and really we haven't, but I still feel that way today, that we've known each other for years. And when you started talking to me about a little bit more about what you do, I'm like, that is so flippin' cool. And I think it's very important, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show to talk about the substance use preventing, and also, you know, recovery. How did I have it? Recovery friendly workplaces, because, and you and I spoke just shortly about that before we came on the show. We need to get out there to these businesses and get them to open their eyes a little bit, because my ex-wife is busting her butt trying to find a job, and she's struggling with it because of her past. And that's the word, right? Past. It's not who she is now, it's her past, and she's still struggling. So what got you to even want to do this? I mean, you've had to have a passion for it.
Well, you know, when I graduated from college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought I did. And then, you know, how things change and paths take you in different places. And after graduation, I became a middle school teacher in Southern Louisiana. And I was teaching a group of sixth graders, most of whom were 15, 16 years old, which is not a typical age for a sixth grader. My students really struggled with reading, really struggled with caring about their academics, because they were dealing with so many other life situations. Some of them were working jobs. They were the primary caregiver for their brothers and sisters. Some of them had dealt with sexual assault, were, you know, dealing with poverty and all of the consequences of that. And so I was trying to get them, you know, to care about long division and the Roman Empire. And one day I just had this moment where I said, yes, academics are important, but there's a whole other side of the report card that I wasn't teaching, because I was so focused on the academic piece. And I know and knew at that time that there is more to the education system than just grades, right? And in a perfect world, yes, kids would have families and parents and adults in their lives who would instill these things in them: resiliency and coping strategies and budgeting and sexual health and all of these things. Yes, perfect world, a family would teach that. We don't live in a perfect world.
Yeah.
And so I went to my principal and I said, I know what I've been asked to do, but I'm telling you what needs to happen. And she was so gracious and said, by teaching them these things, these important life skills, developmental assets, and doing that, you will inevitably impact and increase their academic performance. And we did. We did. So for me, that opened up a whole world of public health, which is very different than a traditional classroom education, but there's a more macro level education, whether it's around, sun safety or nutrition or, diabetes awareness, or in my case, substance use. And so when I was in graduate school, meth was ravaging the Midwest. I came back to Missouri and started doing some public health work on methamphetamine prevention and coalition building in Missouri. And that kind of got me here. And it was the best of both worlds because I could combine my love of public health and teaching, and my growing interest in substance use disorder. I will say I am not a person in long-term recovery, but I have lost several friends and family members to substance use disorder. I've lost several relationships to substance use disorder. I have several friends in active addiction, and I, Nichole, identify as a codependent. And I know that term is, sometimes it's problematic, but that's how I identify. So that's what I'm saying. And so I've participated in, Al-Anon programs throughout the years. And I think my interest in substance use prevention in particular is perfectly in line with my public health background and my education background. And so when we made the change to our new name, Prevent Ed, it really doubled down on the two things that we do the most, which is prevention and education, because we absolutely believe that substance use disorder can be prevented. And when it's not, we can provide education and early intervention, and we can catch those folks and provide paths to recovery, whatever that looks like to them. So we at my organization, we are not treatment. We are not a treatment provider. We do not provide MAT or medication-assisted treatment. And we had our roots in the 12-step program, but we know that there are many paths to recovery. And so when we help folks find the support that works for them, all options are on the table as far as we're concerned. But what we really try to do is stop the problem. And problem is such a loaded word, but we try to stop and prevent anything before it even happens. And that's about 50% of our budget and 50% of our staff.
Okay. So basically, and I don't know, I hope I'm looking at it the right way. You guys are wanting to break the link on the chain, right? Because really, because it is links, right? Because if they're in a family where there is addiction, the likelihood of them falling into that and grabbing onto that is pretty likely.
It increases. Sure.
It increases a ton. And not even really understanding like where it's going to take them, right? Because I've had a lot of guests come on the show and they're like, Al, I just thought this is what every family did. I just thought it was something normal, right? And when you can open their eyes and educate them like what you guys are doing, going, no, this isn't normal. You have that opportunity of breaking that chain to where that cycle stops. It comes to an end right then and there.
Yeah. And so what you're speaking of would be, so it's still part of prevention. It would be more what we would call targeted prevention.
Okay.
Which is for those kiddos maybe who have family members with substance use disorders who are deemed at risk for whatever, right? And then there's something called selective prevention, which is, let's say, and we do this too, where you have, let's say, a young person who gets caught coming drunk to a school dance. Okay. Kind of typical, quote unquote, teenage behavior. That kid does not need to be introduced to the juvenile justice system. And that kid, dollars to donuts, does not need to be introduced to a treatment system. And something needs to be done.
Mhm.
That's where education comes in. What are your goals? What do you hope for? How's your behavior contributing to or taking away from those goals? Do you know about the brain science about this stuff? Do you know what a drink even is? How did you even get into this situation where you're coming drunk to a school dance because the person you like was convincing you to do that, right? To try to get them back on a healthy path. But the other part of prevention is universal prevention before anything happens. So this is where we go into a classroom multiple times. So it's not just it's not an assembly, but we're going into a classroom multiple times, beginning in kindergarten, usually 4 to 8 times a school year after year, going in and talking to all kids, whether or not they come from a family with substance use disorder, whether or not they get into trouble, whether or not they are so focused on their grades and are really anxious and are maybe at risk of using stimulants or performance enhancers. Before any of that even happens, we're talking to all kids. And that's really the beauty of universal prevention. It's like a seatbelt. Everybody should wear a seatbelt.
Yeah.
Whether or not you like to drive fast or drive slow, whether or not you text in a car or you don't. Everybody should wear a seatbelt. We know this. Science tells us this. Will some people still get hurt if they get into a car accident while wearing a seatbelt? Of course, but you lower the risk. And so around 5th grade, we start introducing to kids the concept of risk and that life is a risk, right? I took a risk today getting in my car to come to work. Are there things I can do to lessen my risk? Yes. And I'm not going to stay at home forever and ever because I'm scared to take a chance.
Yeah.
And so, yes, so family use is a huge predictor of future use. But one of the bigger predictors is actually any use before the age of 15. So at Prevent Ed, we try to put off the use past the age of 15 as much as possible. The more we can put it off, the more the brain can develop, so that when that person does start using, or if that person does start using, their brain is fully cooked, so to speak.
Yeah. How how easy, or let's put it this way, was it difficult for you to get into the schools to do this? Because I have found it difficult here. Now, I don't know if it's because of being in Salt Lake, right? And having the LDS faith as the majority of the religion here, and that's taboo, right? We don't talk about it. It's like sex. You just don't talk about it because
Right.
it's bad. I've reached out to schools and said, "Hey, I'd love to come in." And I just get flat out told, "No, we don't want anybody to come in and talk about it." And I even know somebody like one of the top dogs with the Jordan School District. And I says, "How can I make this happen?" And he goes, "Unfortunately, we leave it up to the principals.
Right.
So there's nothing we can do." And I'm like, "Well, this doesn't make sense to me." Now, I did get into one of our local high schools finally. I met two lovely young ladies at a networking group, and I happened to be a facilitator at a table, and they came in and they heard my little 60-second spill. They got with me afterwards, and I was telling them that I wanted to get out there, but I was told no. And they says, "Well, we can bring you in the back door." I'm like, "So what, literally sneak me in?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, no, we have a health class and we love to bring guests come in, have guests come in and talk to the health classes, and we can talk about addiction." Now, of course, I can't talk religion, I can't say this, I can't say that. They really kind of hold you under the microscope. However, it still gave me an opportunity to share something of how easy it is to fall into it and not realize you're falling into it.
Yeah. So I think so we've been doing school-based prevention since 1980. So I think that that's one of the benefits we have is our reputation. We also hire teachers. So when we are going into schools, these are people who have teaching degrees or relative experience, relevant experience.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who know how to manage a classroom. These are people who are trained in behavior strategies, working with students with disabilities, trained in cultural competence. And so for us, that's really one of the things that we lead with, is that when we come in, we are less of a guest speaker and more of an extension of that school or of that classroom. I mentioned that when we go into a classroom, we're in there week after week, and it's usually 4 to 6 weeks. We have some schools where we're in there for 12 to 18 weeks.
Wow.
So we really become an extension of the school. Sometimes we're asked to chaperone field trips, and 98% of our clients in the school-based side really come from word of mouth. So it's a counselor who was at one school, she went to another school and she said, "Hey, Prevent Ed's not here." And because we are teachers, we know how precious the curricula time is, how much pressure the teachers are under. And so when we come in, we really make very good use of the time. All of our lessons too are matched against our core standards here in the state of Missouri, so that for K through 5, we're primarily going in through the counseling time, and that helps the counselor check off some of the standards that they have to meet. And then in the 6th through 12th grades, we are going through the health classes, but we're really going in to augment the drug-specific curricula that the health teachers are providing and really should be providing. I will say, though, in the last couple of years, we have had some pushback at the younger levels from, I would say, more conservative school districts who get real nervous about the concept of social emotional learning and think that only the home parents should be talking about that. So we have had some districts say, "Sorry, you can't come in." And unfortunately, we have a wait list. So if we can't go into your school, we will go into another one. We will present at school board meetings and show the value of our programs and show our outcomes, because we pre and post test all of our programs. We can show that we're moving the needle. And quite frankly, our best work happens when nothing happens, right? So for that district that we're there 18 weeks a school year, they know that it's working when their discipline referrals go down, when their attendance goes up, when the fights go down, right? That's when our best work happens, when kids don't have to get their stomach pumped from drinking too much, when there aren't fights on campus because of gangs or whatever. So we will make presentations to school boards and show the validity of what we do and the science behind it. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, if they don't want us, we will go somewhere else, because there are waiting lists in all of the counties we serve.
Wow, that's really cool. I mean,
it's awesome.
Yeah,
it's awesome. And I know
really
it's
is.
rare. I know it's rare because in my work with the DEA and the family summits, I've met with families and really frustrated folks who want to get into the schools, whether that's in Denver or in Montana or in Salt Lake. And people are frustrated that that doesn't happen. And I think that you just kind of have to keep showing up. And unfortunately, schools will call you when there's a problem, right? Like if there's a fentanyl overdose or something at the school or with one of their students, that's when some of these schools start frantically searching for a guest speaker. And that's not prevention.
Yeah, you're right.
That's crisis communication. You're putting out a fire.
Yeah. And to have you guys come in at such an early age, I think is so impressive. And the reason why is I've had probably close to a dozen guests that have been on the show where literally at age 6, 5, 7. I mean, my good friend who's a Winter Olympian won a silver medal. He grew up here. I mean, he says he remembers being sandwiched in between his mom and whatever boyfriend she had at that time, driving down Salt Lake doing drive-by shootings, and then going home and doing drugs at 6.
Yeah.
So to be able to go in and talk about this at such a young age, I mean, I tip my hat off to you guys, because it does need to happen, because it's happening earlier and earlier in these kids' lives. It's not like when we grew up, right? I mean, pot, when I grew up, I mean, I really didn't hear a lot about that until junior high, right? And maybe saw someone sniffing glue on the bus every once in a great while. And now you've got so much that's happening out there at such a young age.
So in Missouri, the average age of first use is around 12.
Gee.
And yeah. And in kindergarten, as an example, we're not even really talking about drugs. We're talking about naming uncomfortable feelings.
Okay.
Then what do you do with those? Who are grown-ups you talk to? Here's a great example. We get this a lot. We talk to kids, and it'll show the intersection between kind of life skills and substance use. We have a whole lesson where we talk about riding in cars with adults and things that make you uncomfortable and things that make you comfortable. You would be shocked, or maybe you wouldn't, Al, by the number of kindergartners that are like, well, it makes me uncomfortable when my fill in the blank drives drunk. I don't know what to say. I don't want to get in the car with them. Or less serious, quote unquote, would be, I have really bad asthma and I don't like riding in the car with people who vape. How do I handle that?
Yeah.
These are kindergartners, right? And so it's also about being a good friend and sharing and feeling good about yourself and knowing where you belong, and that that you can give a compliment. We call it a push-up, but also that you can accept a compliment, because many of us are wildly uncomfortable accepting a compliment.
Yeah.
And we know that a lot of substance use disorder comes from people's feelings of inadequacy. So yes, we want to give them the skills to avoid uncomfortable situations, specifically involving substance use disorder, like being in a car when you have asthma and feeling like you're going to suffocate to death because you can't breathe, but also feeling good in your own skin, so that maybe by the time when you're in 7th grade and somebody offers you, a drink or whatever, you can be like, nah, I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah.
And really be okay with it.
Yeah.
Be like, nah, I'm fine. Thanks. I mean, that's the goal. And the really cool thing for us is when we can involve teens to deliver our message. So that's a huge way that we also find success, is we really lean into the power of peers. So we talk a lot about now peers as adults, right? The peer workforce, certified peer specialists, all of that. But that all has its roots in the peer work in the prevention movement, where you're teaching a group. We have a program, for example, called It's Complicated. And we teach juniors and seniors in high school who have been selected by their counselor to be trained. And we teach them 3 lessons on weed, on cannabis, how it impacts the brain, THC versus CBD, bud tenders versus pharmacists. We teach them, and then they go into their health classes and they're teaching the curricula.
Wow.
And that is like, if you can do that, right? Like that's like the icing on the cake.
I can see why. Yeah.
Right? Exactly. Because like
Absolutely.
I'm super cool, but not nearly as cool as a junior that's like, yeah, here's how cannabis affects you. And, I mean, I really am interested in this program because I'm an athlete, and I know that a lot of athletes like really struggle with cannabis use, and they end up losing contracts and stuff. I didn't want to do that. So that's why I'm here. Here's the information I'm learning. We also have one for drinking too. It's called Try Putting Off Drinking, where juniors and seniors talk to underclassmen about the effects of binge and heavy drinking on the developing teen brain, and also what to do if there's somebody you're concerned about, which is that piece, right? To really
Yes.
like empower them and give them something to do with that information. Whether it's at a party when somebody's passed out, or whether like you just are concerned about their behavior, you know, because of maybe their grades are falling or they got kicked off a team or whatever, giving them the tools to intervene. That's prevention. That's
That is
prevention.
prevention. Yeah, absolutely. This is such an incredible program, you know, and I mean, do you know of other states that actually do what you guys do?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I would say not to the breadth and depth of
Okay.
what we do. We're sort of known for providing kind of the widest swath. But, you know, CADCA, the national organization, I forget the exact name, but, you know, they empower a lot of community coalitions to do this work. So that could be on a Native American reservation, really, you know, teaching prevention for that population. Or, you know, there's a lot of amazing prevention work that happens in the state of New York. A really great prevention. There's a lot of prevention that happens in New Jersey when we talk about elderly populations and seniors, and making sure, because that's a rising, you know, demographic in terms of substance use disorder and contraindication with medicine. So I think that there are a lot of us doing it. It's just, it's kind of unsexy, if I can say that on here,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it's the thing, again, it's effective when nothing happens.
Yeah.
And so it isn't exactly the thing that gets the funding, gets the eyeballs, gets the attention, but it, along with treatment, along with harm reduction, and along with recovery, all of those parts need to be addressed at the same time, with the same amount of funding, with the same amount of vigor. And that's something that we advocate for.
Yeah. It's all part of the cog.
It's all part of it. It's all part of it. That's right. It's
Yeah.
like the oil changes on your car. You know,
Yeah.
you need the
Yeah.
oil changes, then, and you need the oil, and you need the gas,
And the filter, the new
and the
filter.
filter.
Go
And
on. Yeah.
sometimes you need to go to the shop because something's broken, right?
Yeah.
But you need that preventative maintenance. That's all part of it to lessen the impacts down the line.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. Man, good for you guys.
Clearly, I love what I do. I get really
Well,
passionate about it. I
I can
love
see
it.
why. I can
Yeah.
see why. That's how I get when I was actually just a guest right before you came on. I was just finishing up a show. I was a guest on a podcast from the UK. So
Oh,
I was being
cool.
interviewed from a gentleman from Inside Addiction out of the UK. And it was, I get so passionate sometimes I don't know when to shut up, right? Because we have such a drive, right? We want to make a difference. And yeah, we know a change needs to happen, right?
That's right.
And
That's
it
right.
happens with people like us and so many others
So
who are
many
going,
others.
I'm done. I'm going to do something to make a difference.
That's right.
So we don't have a lot of time because I know you have a meeting. So literally we've got about 5 minutes, but I want to touch something real quick, Nichole. What are your thoughts on recovery friendly workplaces? Because I think that's a huge issue. Again, especially here, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, especially here in this state, right here in Utah,
Yeah.
because they are looked at as someone unworthy when really that's not the case, because the majority of these individuals want to change their life and they want to make a difference. And also, even with someone like my past, where I did alcohol and cocaine every Friday and Saturday night, except when I went to my job, I did my job top notch. All my evaluations were scored very highly. I never missed work. I went to work even when I was sick, you know, and I lost my job still because of a dirty UA, which again, it's not their fault, it's my fault. But I think we need to start educating businesses a lot more, because people like us, we can come into work and still have a family member who's suffering, and it affects our worth, especially if we're
Absolutely.
living
It's
with them, right?
presenteeism. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
So recovery friendly workplace movement came out of New Hampshire, actually. And so it was really founded kind of in the Northeast, and it's slowly trickled to other states. We have been in practice a recovery friendly workplace for decades. We actually received the designation from the state of Missouri in May. But as I said, we've been this for a long time. And so what does that mean? Well, for us, what it means to be a recovery friendly workplace is that we treat everybody like a human being. We're not zero tolerance. We don't drug test our employees. We don't drug test our clients, by the way. When we have somebody come in for an assessment, we're not drug testing them. If we know that they're under the influence of a substance, we will say to them, let's reschedule so that you can come back with a clear head and we can actually figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we're not drug testing our clients, we're not drug testing our staff. It's also not a one and done, right? If you mess up, you're out of here. We have a pretty robust EAP program, employee assistance plan program, where we'll talk with counseling, we'll, help them find what they need. That's critical, right? Because again, with our clients, it's not a one size fits all approach. So if I have an employee who is under the influence, impaired at work, has had a remission in their recovery, we need to get to the bottom of that. And I'm not going to say, oh, you need to go to this place. You need to talk to this person and get to the bottom and then you come back. No, we're gonna kind of figure it out together. At Prevent Ed, we have probably a third of our staff that is in long-term recovery, but about everyone here has been impacted by substance use disorder. As a matter of fact, it's the question that is asked to every employee, every potential employee on their second interview.
Wow.
We say, how have you seen the consequences of addiction in your own life? And in that conversation, we want to hear, how are they talking about addiction? Are they talking about it like it's a character flaw or a choice or a moral failing? Are they talking about it that maybe it was a series of choices that now led to a progressive brain disease? Are they saying, oh, I don't have any experience. I don't come from one of those kind of families. That person's not getting a job here, right? So that's another way that we're recovery friendly. Another way we're recovery friendly is that we celebrate recovery birthdays and milestones, just like we would with, a typical birthday. We promote NA options. We don't have drinking at our holiday parties. We don't make jokes about getting drunk. You know what I mean? Like, these are all things that contribute to a recovery friendly workplace. And because we have a significant number of people here who are in long-term recovery, we're also looking at the whole candidate when they apply, as opposed to, oh, they got a rap sheet. Well, no kidding. No kidding, they have a rap sheet. Have you ever talked to somebody with a substance use disorder? Like, they're doing what they need to get, like doing what they need to do. Of course, they're probably going to have some shoplifting, obvious. That's kind of like a no-brainer.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we just take them away, then we're missing out on some amazing people. The last thing I will say, I said all of the altruistic reasons about being a recovery friendly workplace because it's the right thing to do and it's treating somebody like a human. But quite frankly, it's also a really good business decision.
Yeah.
It's a really good business decision, especially in this market, looking for candidates. It's virtually impossible to fill roles. And then you want to talk about trades and you want to talk about, if we do a lot of work with the construction industry here in St. Louis, who have really been leaders nationally in this movement, because they know that they need workers. And they're not allowing everybody to get high on the job. That's not what it is. Okay. That's the perception. That's not what it is. But it's also saying, we want you, even if you have a storied past, and we want to help support you so that you can stay on a healthy path. That's a recovery friendly workplace.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Real
That's what
fast
it is.
before we sign off, I had someone call me who has a loved one who's battling alcoholism. Sat down, had a meeting with them, me and a friend of mine. And this kid definitely wants help. He's begging for help. He's been at his job a while. He's a very good employee. So basically, he's a functioning alcoholic.
Yep.
In his mid-20s, but he's good at what he does. He went to his employer, said, this is what's going on. This is what's happening with me. He was scared to death, of course, of possibly losing his job.
Absolutely.
And what I heard floored me, and I was so happy to hear it. They said, you know what? You're a valuable employee. You do a good job for us. You go get the help you need. And when you're done, your job will still be here. That right there, I tip my hat off to that company right there. Yep.
And you know what they now have? A loyal employee.
Absolutely.
And not just a loyal employee, but a loyal family, because that employee is a human being that's part of the family, right?
Yeah.
And so they now have secured loyalty. And I don't know any president of a company that doesn't want that.
Right.
And
yeah.
I'm not saying that's why they do it. I mean, it could be in some cases, but that breeds community. And that's what every owner of a company is trying to build. To me, it's a win-win-win. Anybody who comes to me who pokes holes in it and says, why would I do this? Or this is going to be too hard. I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to talk to me about becoming a recovery friendly workplace, I can share policies that we have, because sometimes that's the hardest part, right? I can talk through like some of the concerns that my board had, and how we kind of got around those. Happy to talk about it. This has kind of become my passion project. So happy to talk more about it.
Well, I know you're on a time constraint, Nichole, and I mean, we could talk about this for another hour. So I want to respect your time. Are you okay for me to put your email at the bottom of the captions in case anybody wants to get a hold of you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I really appreciate the time and being on here. This is it's wonderful. So thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you for your time, Nichole. I greatly appreciate it. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you again in the near future. And again, thank you, guys. Thank you to all our listeners, all our sponsors, all our guests, man, everybody. We couldn't do this without you. You guys are the ones that's making this a success. So remember this: addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.